John, we have boxed ourselves into a corner. Now I don't know how to get out of this. What should we do? How can we take this mess right now and get it fixed?
Well, there's only one possible solution. I want to underline the word possible because it's not clear it would work, but it's the only game in town, in my opinion. And that is we do everything we can to shut down the war immediately. And we go to great lengths to create a neutral Ukraine. We get the Ukrainians to make it clear to the Russians that they have no intention of joining NATO. They will be a neutral state, and they will go to great lengths not to pursue a security policy that threatens Russia in any way. And then the second thing that needs to be done, as I said before, is that the security relationship between the United States and Ukraine has to be completely ended. The Russians have to see that Ukraine is independent, clearly independent of the United States. If you create a situation like that, I believe the Russians will see much less of a threat from Ukraine than they do today. And you may be able to get the Russians to work out some sort of deal where they don't take much more territory in Ukraine. And of course, more Ukrainians don't end up getting killed. I think that is the only hope we have. And if we don't pursue it and we continue to operate on this illusion that you see reflected in the comments of people like Jake Sullivan and General Petraeus, that this war is winnable over the long term, the end result is many more Ukrainians are going to die, and the country is going to be even more wrecked than it has already been wrecked, and more territory is going to be lost to the Russians.
Would it be fair to say that in that scenario that to avoid the charge of, oh, you're just being weak and you're capitulating, just simultaneously say, but we're going to continue to beef up the eastern flank of NATO, so you still can't come 1 inch into NATO, blah, blah, blah. We're not going away. We're just not going to go down a stupid path. Is that fair?
I wouldn't do that. I'd actually back off in Eastern Europe. I'd do everything I can to assuage Russian fears. I mean, if you're interested in shutting this one down, if you pull out of Ukraine, you basically sever the ties with Ukraine, and then you greatly increase NATO forces in Eastern Europe. And you want to remember that a number of those states are right up on Russia's border.
Yeah.
You're, I think, asking for trouble. You're going to scare the Russians. The Russians don't trust us. That's what's very important to understand.
Yeah.
Putin believed that he made a fundamental mistake thinking that the West was negotiating in good faith with him in the past. And he's not going to be played for a sucker again. Given that mindset, right, you have to do everything possible to assuage his fears. You may not like that, and I can fully understand why no Western leader would want to hear that. But the fact is, he's holding all the cards now. We are not. We are in desperate straits. So we are the ones who have to make concessions.
Here's something that Putin recently said that shows his contempt for the West.
Сейчас тоже Ширака нет, Жака Ширака. Он был крупным таким политическим деятелем. Я как-то его спросил, почему американское руководство так себя ведет? Ну, так агрессивно и так недальновидно действует в некоторых случаях. Он мне по-русски ответил, потому что некультурные.
He obviously has contempt, and I guess, if you're talking, we can just limit it to like the Minsk Accords, which we now know that the West never intended to follow, or Istanbul, which didn't happen. And so you can see why he wouldn't feel that way.
Well, it's very important to understand that the Baltic states, Romania, Poland, Hungary, these countries, which are effectively frontline states, are all in NATO, and they all have Article 5 guarantees. And that should not change at all. And that will do a great deal to deter the Russians from ever attacking those countries. And I am not saying for 1 second, given that NATO is intact, that we should abandon those countries. My point is that we don't want to be provocative towards the Russians in their efforts to defend those countries at this point in time for the sake of Ukraine. We want to do everything possible to save Ukraine.